All right, and now we are heading on over right now to Hall D for the Hearthstone panel. Enjoy it live right here on DirecTV.
Welcome to the Hearthstone Fireside Chat. Your hosts are Eric Dodds and me, Ben Brode.
This is awesome. Well, welcome to the Hearthstone Fireside Chat. So before I jump in, I wanted to say, because this chat goes a little bit long, we're actually not going to be able to answer questions at the end. But myself and other members of the Hearthstone team are going to actually be at the community booth on and off. So we'd love to talk to you if you swing by and talk to us there. So I'm kind of going to give you an overview of the things we're going to be talking about today. And initially, we're going to talk about kind of what Hearthstone was about, how it started, what the team was about, sort of where it came from. And then we're going to move into the road we took to making Hearthstone, because we made sort of a lot of crazy and interesting decisions and choices along the way. And some of them we really liked and kept, and some of the other ones we kind of left by the wayside, and Ben's going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about what it takes to make a great card for Hearthstone, sort of both with the existing sets, the basic and expert set, but also going forward what we're looking for in a great card. And then we're going to go into some of the stuff you'll probably be pretty interested in, sort of where we stand today, some fun numbers, talk about the metagame a little bit, what class is best, and then lastly, where we're going. And with where we're going, it's going to be both the next couple of months and sort of the things we'll be doing the next patch or two. And at the same time, we'll be talking about sort of 2014 and sort of our larger goals for the game as a whole, sort of philosophical. So who we are is, I'm Eric Dodds. I'm the lead designer on Hearthstone. And this is Ben Brode. He is the other half of the Hearthstone design team. We're not a very large team, but
Greetings.
there we go. And one thing I wanted to clear up really quickly is that there's often a perception that the people who come and stand up here are these superhuman people who basically make the whole game by themselves. And that is absolutely, well, it's actually never true. But in our case, it's even less so true, because we are working on the Hearthstone team. It's called Team 5, and they're absolutely amazing. And they're all involved in pretty much all aspects of the design, all aspects of the game everybody's involved in. We're a team that wears a lot of hats, which is actually kind of awesome. It's one of those advantages of being a smaller team. So this is actually Team 5. Yeah. And of course, behind us, there's a whole bunch of additional people. There's the mobile group that's working on the different platforms that we're moving forward on. There's the Battle.net group that actually lets you connect to Hearthstone. There's quality assurance that lets you, or well, lets us find hopefully all of the bugs, or at least most of them, or well, let's call them all of them. So anyway, that was Team 5. And as you were probably thinking when you first heard about Hearthstone, either when we announced it at PAX or now or whenever you heard about it, that it's a little bit different from other Blizzard games. I mean, and other Blizzard teams. Other Blizzard games, you know, you go, oh my God, it's going to be epic, and it's going to be huge, and it's going to have all these giant features. And we're certainly not what people were expecting, I think, when we announced. And certainly, we're smaller. These are the numbers of people who are on each of the different development teams, World of Warcraft, Diablo 3, and our team at SHIP. We're actually a few more than that now, but we're significantly smaller than any of the other teams at Blizzard. And actually, that's been kind of awesome, because it's actually let us pursue a game like Hearthstone, let us take this kind of idea that we probably wouldn't have pursued if we had to have a large team, but with a small team, we can pursue this and see where it goes and see what kind of awesome things we can make. We're also a more focused team. And because we're smaller, we sort of have to be more focused. We can't just go, oh, there's going to be awesome single player and awesome multiplayer and this mode and that mode and all these kinds of different modes. We actually have to go, what is the essential Hearthstone experience? And so we focused on that being the kind of the PvP one-on-one experience. And we're actually in a pretty lucky place, I think, because we now have the game out, or we're getting close to open beta, and there's a lot of excitement about it, and we're going to get to the point where we get to start adding a bunch of these features that we would have loved to have had to start. But for now, we've been very focused, and it's made a huge difference on where the game is. Lastly, we've always loved collectible card games. We've played them for many, many years, and it's actually not just the team that has played collectible card games, but it's actually Blizzard as a whole. So here's a very old picture from Blizzard, the floor of the Blizzard offices from 1993. And sitting on the floor playing Magic back then is the Hearthstone lead engineer, Bob Fitch. And somebody else in this picture you might recognize, that's Mike Morheim. So we've been playing these games for a long time and are very excited about them. And we're excited about the possibility of jumping in and making an awesome Blizzard collectible card game. So we have this small team. We have this focus on specific things, and we have this love of collectible card games, and so we had to figure out, what is this game actually all about? And the most important thing about Hearthstone is really that it's a game for everyone. And certainly, I guess I can tell a little story about how when we first started working on the game and first started communicating it to other people at Blizzard, we'd go, yeah, we're making a collectible card game, it's awesome, and they would go, yeah, that's cool. I'm not really into those sorts of games. And we really felt like it was our job to make it so everybody was excited about those sorts of games, because we love those games so much, and we think it's crazy that everybody doesn't love those games so much. So we needed to make sure that everybody who is excited, or everybody could be excited about an online collectible card game. And we did that in a bunch of different ways. I suppose the biggest thing, though, we probably did was focusing on accessibility. So if you look at a lot of the traditional collectible card games that are out there, you kind of want to have a friend teach you how to play the game, and there's complicated rules, and you look at the cards, sometimes they feel like they're written in a different language a little bit, and we wanted to remove all of those barriers and make it so that everybody could jump in and have that game. So those were the sorts of things that we were focusing on to make it a game for everyone. At the same time, we needed to make sure that the game was deep, because it'd be crazy if we just made it super simple and then there was no depth to the game. You played it for a week and you were done. And actually at Blizzard Entertainment, that's the sort of thing that we do for all of our games. You can sort of expect all of our games to be played for weeks and months and years, and we absolutely intend that to be the case with Hearthstone. So anytime we were working on a game system, we were talking about, hey, how can we make it more accessible? And we would look at that and go, are we removing an element or simplifying out an element that made it less deep? And if so, we would either figure out a way how to put that element sort of in the game again, or we'd figure out a different way of just keeping that element in the game. So we made sure that the game stayed deep while we removed a lot of the complexities of the game. We also needed to make sure that the game was physical. I mean, both Ben and I have been know the feeling of you open a physical pack of cards and you spread them out in your hand, and it's one of those awesome feelings to just have it feel very physical. And it actually seems a little bit crazy that I'm talking about this, because I'm saying, hey, make it physical is the thing, but it's a digital game. What are you doing? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. But we felt like we could do it, and we did it by making that there's this physical box that has physical UI in it that opens up, and the game is inside. And when I'm playing the cards actually really rip out of the frames they're in and smash into the board. And when you're fighting, the things are just smashing into each other and moving back and forth. And the whole game feels like it's actually this little physical space that you have this window into. It's very important that the cards in the space just really, grabs you in that way. We, of course, since it's a World of Warcraft game, we have to make sure that there's flavor to it as well, that great World of Warcraft flavor. And it's actually been awesome for us because the World of Warcraft has such a rich universe, so many different characters, so many different places, and so many different attachments that all of you guys have to all of the different parts of the game. So that part of it has been awesome. We've been able to go, let's take the great flavor of World of Warcraft and just bring it into our game. At the same time, though, we wanted to make sure that it was a little bit different, that there was a specific Hearthstone flavor to the game. And so what we did is we sort of took the basic recipe of World of Warcraft, which I sort of think is sort of like 2 parts epic and maybe 1 part kind of whimsical fun, kind of the silly side of it, but it's really more on the epic side. And we added, a few more dashes of charm and whimsy to try to really make that pop, and maybe even a dash of irreverence if you read some of our flavor text. So what that meant was that, here we go. First failure on stage, yes. So what that meant was when we were talking about the charm, that we wanted to really bring the charm that from other games that we talked about a lot, like PopCap. We talk a lot about PopCap games and Peggle and how anytime you do anything in those games, a fun, exciting thing is happening and a fun, whimsical thing is going on, and really imbuing that in the recipe for Hearthstone. So, the basis flavor is World of Warcraft, and then sort of our own special blend of charm and whimsy added onto it. We needed to make sure the game was playing fast, because frankly, nobody has tons of time to play. Well, actually, okay, we probably have lots of time to play games, but it's better off if you only have, like, I have 10 or 20 minutes, so I can fit in a game here, fit in a game here. Especially if you're talking iPad, you definitely need these games to play pretty quickly. And if you talk about traditional collectible card games, I mean, they're awesome, but they take often 20 to 30 to maybe more than that minutes. And we needed to make sure that the game played very quickly. And we did a number of things to make those changes. For instance, one of the biggest things I guess we did is we took mana crystals and we made that the base resource model. So instead of resources being in your hand and I sort of have to choose which resource out of my hand I'm playing into play, you get a mana crystal each turn at the start of the turn. And not only does it speed things up because you're not making that early decision, which often isn't super interesting, but also what it means is the game actually very quickly gets to the climax of the game. So you very quickly get to 8 or 9 or 10 mana, and you're dropping Ragnaros on the table, and big things are happening, so the game isn't going too long. Lastly, we needed to make sure whether or not you win or lose the game is still fun. And certainly, you like to win. Even if you win the game a lot, though, or win a lot of games, you still actually lose the game a fair amount. And we wanted to make sure that when you had that experience, it was still a fun experience. And some of that we actually call back to the previous slide of making it play fast. Because if a game plays fast, if it only takes 8.5 minutes to play, maybe you don't mind so much getting beat, you're ready to jump in there again. But there were actually some specific mechanics that we did to make it play fast, or to make it still fun when you're losing the game. There's a bunch of traditional collectible card mechanics that are super fun to play if you're the one choosing that mechanic and you're doing it to the enemy. If I'm making my enemy discard cards, it's pretty awesome. If you're on the receiving end of that, it's pretty non-awesome. And so we wanted to make sure when you are in that experience, or we removed discard because we wanted to make sure that if you lose, you're not losing because your opponent was taking away all of your options and you're just like, yeah, I'm just hanging out, watching my cards being discarded. Sort of same with resource destruction. And I guess lastly, one of the things is about making it fun to win or lose is baked into the very essence of Hearthstone, and that is that something I guess I call little victories. And what a little victory is each turn, very often at the start of your turn, you're looking in Hearthstone, you're looking at the enemy's board, and you're saying, I'm in big trouble. They've got a bunch of minions out. I don't have a solution for this. And then during the course of your turn, you figure out this puzzle. You destroy all of their minions. You got a bunch of minions out on your own, and you had a victory there. And because the game goes back and forth so much, you actually really get to have a bunch of little victories along the way to the final whether I win or lose. And again, of course, it's better if you win. But if you lose, at least you had a good time losing, or maybe a less bad time. So those are the basic sort of tenets that we were going for with Hearthstone. And next we're going to talk a little bit about making the game. There were some interesting paths we went down, and give you some insight into what was involved when we were actually creating Hearthstone. And Ben Brode is going to let you know how that went.
I'm so excited to tell you guys about, thank you, about us making the game and some things we tried in development of Hearthstone. And one of the things that it helps us get to a really great place is iteration. We often try things that aren't that fun, and then we realize they're not that fun, and we try something new and different. And we did a lot of prototyping for Hearthstone. We did paper prototypes where we tried some things with physical, like paper cards that we printed out. And we did some web prototyping as well. And here's an example of a physical prototype we tried, just to try some kind of crazy UI thing. We wanted to see if you could play a card game without a bunch of text in the battlefield. And so we cut out just the art and tried to play a game with just the art of the cards and said, oh yeah, this actually works. Let's cut text out of the battlefield and we use that in the game. Here's another physical prototype we tried. Actually, one of the things we wanted to do with Hearthstone is have heroes that represent heroes in Warcraft. And we wanted to make them feel really powerful, and so one of the things we tried was you could equip a hero with weapons and armor and hide him in a fortress. And if your opponent destroys your fortress, just 20 health, your hero pops out with his weapons, he feels amazing and badass, and then you have to kill their hero to win. And it was cool, but what you really should do is bring your opponent's fortress down to 1 health and then amass a giant army, and when the hero pops out, you greet him with the force of 1,000 orcs and crush him, and so it didn't work out great. But it's one of the things we tried as we were trying to figure out what is Hearthstone, what is this game, that we tried a lot of crazy ideas to get us honed in on what was a really fun experience. We eventually moved to an online web prototype, and this is one of the first versions of that. We didn't have hero powers yet, but we had our resource model figured out that we really liked. And we learned a lot of things about user interface and how to interact with these cards in a digital space. But one of the things that we had still at this point was a version of responses. And in traditional collectible card games, often you can respond to your opponent's moves and do things on their turn. But that did not work great for us in an online space. And so we tried to simplify that mechanic, and we had a thing called combat tricks. If you attacked your opponent and you had a combat trick card, this thing would pop up and say, combat tricks. And you'd get to play a card that messed with their attack somehow. And it simplified the concept of kind of general responses down to something simpler, something easier for the online space. And we liked that better, but then in this mode we realized that when we didn't draw any combat tricks, the game was actually way more fun. Your opponent wasn't taking part of your turn on your turn, you weren't kind of distracted by all these pauses during the game. The game was still super strategic and deep, and so we just took them out of the game and everybody had a lot more fun playing, and it was much faster too. Here's another version of our web prototype, and this one is a little bit more cartoony. We were trying to figure out what was our motif for this game. What is this thing? Are these characters like real characters, like Warcraft 3, am I controlling an army? Who am I even? And in our next build of the game, we tried a new motif. What if these are pieces? What if this is a board in a tavern? What if this actually takes place in the world of Warcraft? And so we tried that next. This is an early version of that prototype. And it worked great. The team really liked this direction a lot. It was fun to think of it as like a game, like a little piece. These are real things. How do they move around in a real space? And actually, this is one of our final versions of that web prototype. You could see actually how far we took not only the game mechanics, but the user interface. Even in this web prototype, we did lots and lots of iterations to try and get as close as possible before we started full development. But once we did, here's an early version of that. This is one of our first takes at a 3D environment. This is a board we tried early in development from Blackrock Mountain. But we had to do a lot of discovery. What does it mean to play this game in 3D? Like, how do these pieces move? It's very different coming from what we prototyped in 2D. And this is one of the first versions of the game running in our final engine. This is kind of where we started on our path to what Hearthstone is today. But one of the things you can't quite tell from all of these screenshots is how the card set evolved. We tried lots of different mechanics and lots of different things that we thought might work or didn't. A lot of them didn't work. But we really wanted to explore what it means to be an online-only game. What kinds of things can we do in this space that we never dreamed of before? And so we tried a couple of things. A lot of them really worked well, like Thoughtsteel, Nozdormer, and King Mukla. These are cards that are much harder to do in a physical space that worked great online. But there were some things that we tried that did not work out very well, and here's a couple examples of those. Here's the Devouring Ooze, which gets stronger for each game you lose in a row. Didn't work out great. Here's the Auto Pecker, which deals the damage to any player who mouses over it. And here's the World Flipper, which flips your opponent's screen upside down. So these did not work great, and we cut these out of the game. I know they are awesome, but it didn't work so good. So we also worked a lot on the deck builder. This is a thing that's actually really complicated for players who are new to card games. There's a lot of data. You have to look through all these cards and try and get your favorite 30 cards together in a deck. So we tried a lot of things to try and boil this experience down into something a little simpler. Here's some examples of kind of an early deck builder. This was a little overwhelming for for new players. This didn't work great. And we tried to make the deck feel more physical with this version here. We tried a lot of things. These are all actual working prototypes of our collection manager and deck builder. Although this is just a mock-up, we tried to make the cards feel really physical. It feels like a real jumble of cards. Not very functional. And then actually, here's a version that's a mock-up of actually kind of a little bit closer to where we ended up. We were actually really worried about the deck list here. It's the first time we've done a deck builder like this because it doesn't feel as physical as this jumble of cards. And we were worried that we tried to keep everything so physical in this game that this would be kind of a detachment from that. But one of my favorite stories about development of Hearthstone is the arena. And the arena comes from a mode that we love to play in traditional card games called draft. And the way that draft works, if you've never played draft, is you get 8 people sitting around a table and you give them each a booster pack. And then you choose one card from that pack and add it to a pool of cards you're going to build a deck from. You pass the rest of the cards to the guy on your left. He takes the card out and it goes around the table and everybody kind of chooses cards from packs until they have a big enough pool to make a deck from. And this mode's awesome, but it takes a while though. It takes a few hours to draft and build a deck and play the games with the people at the table. And so having a really multi-hour experience online for a game like this didn't feel great. And so Hamilton Chu, executive producer of Hearthstone, said, what if we could take this exciting mode and split it up over a longer period of time? What if we could do this asynchronously? What if I could come to the table and draft a couple of cards and pass those along, and then if my cards aren't ready for me, I'll go away and make dinner and then come back and do a little bit more. And that would obviously take what's maybe a 4-hour experience and make it like a 20-hour experience. There's something genius there. It's a cool idea. What if we could take this fun mode and make it playable online? And so we tried this idea. We give you a pack of cards. You choose one card from that pack, and then you go up to the wall where we've stapled a bunch of envelopes full of packs, and you swap the cards that you have left with the envelope that has those cards in it stapled on the wall. And then you take one card out of that pack and then go again, swap it with the card that has the pack that has 5, and so on. And in this way, you're actually drafting with people who have gone before you down the line of envelopes. You take one card from each pack, and the guy comes after you takes one card from each pack, and so on. And what's great about this is that you can play with any number of players. You can have 1 player drafting or 17 players drafting, and there's always this wall of things. You can come in on the weekend by yourself and draft a deck. And so we really liked how it made the drafting process feel really asynchronous, and you could do it in any time. So we knew that was cool. But there still was some stuff that we felt like we could do better about this drafting experience, because when you first get your pack, this is what you see, and you have to choose one. It's kind of overwhelming. There's a lot of cards there. You have to figure out what class you're going to play, and there's so many good choices in that pack. And what's worse is that as people choose cards out of this pack, there's no choices left. I'm playing Warlock, and you pass me a Priest card, a Paladin card, and a Druid card. What do I do with this? And it's not as fun as it was earlier in the draft. And so we played this mode a lot, and we felt, when is it most fun to get past a pack of cards? And we felt like really it was most fun when you had 3 choices, when there was 3 cards that were good for your deck that you were trying to choose which one is best for me. We said, what if we just give you 3 good choices? What if we just take 3 cards that you can play, so we'll only give you Warlock cards and generic minions, and you just look at those and say, what's best for my deck? And we tried that. Obviously, that is kind of where Arena ended up, is we give you 3 choices, you choose one 30 times, that all ends up in your deck. And it was really fun. It was that experience of choosing your deck as you go on the fly in a limited environment. And it was really fun. Once we had this mode working, the team really got excited about it. We played it all the time. Even though it doesn't really bear any resemblance to draft anymore. It's kind of got this core, like, choosing my cards thing, but it's pretty different. So we didn't want to call it draft anymore, and eventually, through a couple of name changes, ended up at the Arena. But that's kind of how it was born. That was the story of how we weaseled our way through all these different iterations into what is now the Arena. So that's all that story about how we kind of made Hearthstone through all that iteration. And I'm going to pass it back to Eric Don to tell you about how we make a card.
It was actually pretty awesome during the period of time when we were testing some of this stuff, because it was kind of weird. We had all of these envelopes with cards stapled all over the walls. It just had a really fun feel to it where we were so experimental. Anyway, so we're going to talk about making a card and sort of our philosophies about what makes an awesome card in Hearthstone. And I guess it's a little bit different than in some other games. First off, the card has to be easy to understand. And quite simply, what that means for us is the first time a new player reads a card, they have to instantly know what that card means. So I see a card, look at it, and go, oh yes, that's exactly what that card means. And that's important for a couple of reasons. The first reason is, of course, I just opened a pack or won a card somehow, and I look at it, and I want to instantly look at it and go, how is that going to work in my warrior deck or whatever, and have my brain start churning with all these cool ideas for how I'm going to incorporate it into that deck. But actually, it's a little bit more important than that, in that when you're playing against another person, because remember, we want these games to play fast, I'm playing against another person, they play a card I haven't seen, I actually want to instantly go, I know what it is, I've never seen it, but I know how it works within the game, so the game just keeps right on going because I kind of get it. And so actually, anytime we find a card that a new player doesn't get it the first time they see it, we talk about how can we change the text? Maybe we have to change the design. I mean, we changed the design on tons and tons of cards that felt a little bit too hard to understand. So let's look at a pretty simple card in Hearthstone, Whirlwind. Costs 1, deals 1 damage to all minions. And even a card as simple as this, we actually spent a fair amount of time talking to. Because the first time a lot of players saw a card like this, they mentally edited out the to all minions, and they edited in to all of my opponent's minions. And so they'd go, yeah, this is awesome. Hey, how come my guy, oh, wait, oh, it does this thing I didn't expect. So we wanted to make sure that that was pretty clear. So we capitalized the all, and we actually talked a lot about, do we make the all bold? Do we make it in italics? Do we underline it? All these things. So we talked a lot about even a card as simple as this. Is it easy enough to understand? And there's actually an earlier version of Whirlwind that we had that we didn't use, and I think it'll be pretty clear why we didn't use it. It's actually a pretty interesting card. It does some pretty interesting things, but you read it, and you have to read it a couple of times before you go, oh, got it, okay. So that's why we changed it to something else. We also need to make sure these cards have depth. So we want to make simple cards, but cards that have a lot of depth. And a lot of that depth comes from, well, partially it's from, I guess, the card itself. Sometimes a card is interesting in and of itself, but a lot of times the card's interest comes from interaction. So it's, when I'm going to play this card, what are the other cards I could play? Or what minions does my opponent have? Or actually, in a lot of cases, it's what other cards do I have in my deck that I can make it work in interesting ways with. So we can talk about Whirlwind again. And actually, I like Whirlwind as a card because it's actually pretty interesting even if you don't work it in with any other cards. Because if I have Whirlwind, it's going to do 1 damage to all of my minions. I'm going to go, well, I've got some 1 health minions out. I better attack with them because they're going to get killed by Whirlwind anyway, so I have to swing with them. In fact, maybe even the turn before I think I might have to play Whirlwind, I'm going to think twice about playing 1 health minions. And even when I'm building a deck, I'm going to go, oh, I put Whirlwind in it, but maybe 1 health minions aren't the best thing. So there's even some depth with the card with nothing in addition to it. But it becomes much more interesting when you add another card. So this is the Acolyte of Pain. And what this card does is every time it's damaged, you get to draw a card. And as soon as you have an Acolyte of Pain out, you might go, hey, Whirlwind is starting to look like a pretty good card. Sure, it damages my Acolyte of Pain, but I'm going to draw a card out of it. And I don't mind that 1 damage on it because I got to draw a card. This is awesome. And it gets even better when you add a card like Frothing Berserker. And when any minion ever takes damage while it's out, it gets +1 attack. So if there's a couple of enemy minions out, I have these 2 minions out, I play Whirlwind. Hopefully I kill the enemy 2 minions, I draw a card, and my Frothing Berserker is getting +4 attack. So that's where a lot of the depth comes in, is how do you combine the cards from Hearthstone? These cards that have pretty understandable, simple text, but how can you combine them in interesting ways? And we've worked very hard to make sure you can combine them all in very interesting ways. We also need to make sure that these cards are filled with Warcrafty goodness. So when you pull the Asera card, you go, oh, this is awesome, Asera, I know all about the Green Dragon flight, and maybe I fought the Green Dragon world bosses back in the day. It sort of just connects you to World of Warcraft in this very visceral way, and it was very important to us that there is that connection. And actually, I have a little movie. We added an additional effect whenever Asera draws a card. Asera draws a card out of the Emerald Dream. So we figured Asera should probably actually draw a card out of the Emerald Dream when you draw a card with Asera's power. So it's stuff like that that we really want to dig into the Warcraft lore and make this connection and make this exciting, visceral experience in Hearthstone connected with World of Warcraft. We also need to make sure that these cards support the class that they came from. So if a card is a mage card, you want to look at that card and go, how does this card connected to World of Warcraft? If I'm a World of Warcraft mage, do I get it? Do I sort of know what's going on? Do I feel like this card should be a mage card? And at the same time, each of our cards actually have a Hearthstone mechanic. Actually, I mean, each of our classes have a specific mechanic or several mechanics, and we need to make sure that these cards are really tied to that Hearthstone mechanic. So for the mage, for the Fireball card, it's pretty obvious how it's connected to, the World of Warcraft mage. They're throwing fireballs all the time. Can't get them to stop. Makes a lot of sense. There you go. You might, though, look at it and go, well, where's the interesting mechanic as far as attached to Hearthstone? And it costs 4 and deals 6 damage, which is actually very efficient damage-wise, so that's how it's sort of connected to Hearthstone. Mages are good at efficient spell damage, and Fireball is awesome. We also do this some with things that aren't even spells. So this is a rogue card, the Defias Ringleader. If you play World of Warcraft, you know about the Defias Brotherhood. Makes a lot of sense that it's a rogue card because it's a pretty roguey organization. And if you look at the Hearthstone side, it has this combo mechanic, and you can only find the combo mechanic on rogue cards. It's specific to rogues. And how it works is if I've played another card before I play the Defias Ringleader, or before I play any card with combo, the combo effect is triggered. So rogues are very likely to want to just kind of hang back, not play their cards, and then go bam, 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 play a bunch of cards at once, which not only fits within the Hearthstone mechanic, but it also actually sort of ties back to World of Warcraft again, because rogues in World of Warcraft, sometimes they kind of sit back for a bit, and then they jump in and attack in a flurry of attacks. So it's connected in both ways. So we also want a lot of our cards to support player stories. And a player story is a story that, you're playing Hearthstone, and something amazing happens, and you want to run over to your buddy and go, you won't believe what just happened in this game. And it actually happens a lot to us at Blizzard. People are always sending me, screenshots and stories and calling me and stopping me in the hall saying, this crazy thing just happened. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about a story that actually happened with Millhouse Manastorm. And it's actually from one of the streamers that's participating in the Innkeeper's Invitational, Noxious, this got passed all over around the office like a week or 2 ago, something like that. So Noxious played the coin, which gave him an extra mana, and dropped Millhouse Manastorm on turn 1, which is a 4/4 on turn 1. That's really pretty powerful. But Millhouse Manastorm downside is that when you play it, your opponent's spells all are free on the next turn, which, maybe they want to have a lot of spells, so maybe it won't be so bad. So Noxious's opponent then proceeded to play a Thoughtsteal and take some cards out of Noxious's deck. That's not so bad. A little bit of card advantage, you can live with that. And then his opponent played a second Thoughtsteal. And okay, the card advantage is actually starting to look a bit more serious here, but, there's no board presence, you're all good. And then he played a Mind Vision spell. Again, all of these are free because of Millhouse, and he took a card out of Noxious's, or copied a card out of Noxious's hand and put it into his, which wouldn't have been so bad if he hadn't copied Mind Games, which is a spell that lets you randomly take a card out of your opponent's deck and put it into play on your side. So he played Mind Games, of course, randomly went through Noxious's deck and pulled a random card out and put it into play on his side, and of course he got Ragnaros. One of the most powerful cards in the game. Ragnaros immediately proceeded to kill Millhouse, and the game was in big trouble. But what an awesome story. And it's just so important to us that we have cards that create stories that Ben and I never anticipated even happening. We put in the cards, we figured they're going to generate a story, we don't know what's going to happen, and we look forward to hearing the story. So it's very important to us when creating cards to have those stories. Lastly, the cards have to be balanced, sort of obviously, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how the balance can actually affect the game in ways you wouldn't expect. So this is the current Acolyte of Pain. It's a 1/3 for 3, which means it doesn't have a lot of attack power, but its power is, it draws a card every time it takes damage. So maybe you'd put it in a deck if you had cards that gave it extra health or gave it extra attack, or if you're playing a mage and you can ping it directly so you can draw cards for yourself. There's some good ways of putting it, but you don't put it in every deck. And maybe we misjudged it when we first put it in the game in alpha as a 2/4 for 3. So it actually is a pretty strong card even on its base stats at that point. And it led to actually a couple of pretty serious problems. So one thing that it did is it made it that everybody was running 2 copies of the Acolyte of Pain, of course, and thus there was a whole lot more card draw in the game. Every time they came out, it'd get damaged multiple times, you draw more cards. People were playing with cheaper cards because why bother playing with expensive cards when I'm going to keep drawing everything and just keep dumping the cheap cards into play? There's no point. Another thing that it did, which in some ways was just as bad, maybe worse, was that everybody saw this and knew everyone else was going to be playing with 2 copies of the Acolyte of Pain, so they put a whole bunch of copies of Silence in their deck. And Silence is a mechanic that sort of takes away all of the card text from whatever it hits. And what that actually ended up doing was all of the cards in our game that had card text on them felt pretty bad because everybody was running so much Silence because they had to deal with the Acolytes of Pain that everybody was screaming at us, oh my goodness, Silence is the most powerful effect. You have to nerf it. You have to do something about it. It's way too powerful. And admittedly, we actually did nerf it a little bit from then, but actually the biggest change we made was reducing the power of the Acolyte of Pain to a 1/3, so you don't put it in every deck, so people wouldn't all run Silence, so everything sort of got back to normal. So one little change, one little card out of place like that can affect our entire ecosystem. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the game today, sort of some numbers that might be interesting, and a little bit about the metagame. So a couple of interesting stats. People talk a lot about how much is it going to cost me to be a great player in Hearthstone. And what I can say, I'm going to show you the percentage of 3-star master players who have spent no money in the game. And 3-star master is the very best players in our game, the very top level of play. And at the very top level of play, 44% of our 3-star masters have not spent any money in Hearthstone, which we think is pretty cool because we want to make sure that you can play Hearthstone any way you want to play it. Spend money or not, either way is awesome. So we really think that number is pretty cool. Secondly, there's been discussion about when am I going to get into the beta? Why aren't you guys sending out very many beta invites? We really want to be in the beta, and we've actually sent out over 1 million invites to be in the beta so far, and we're continuing to send out more. So there's an awful lot of people who have been invited to play in the beta, and we are very excited about this. It's exciting how much enthusiasm there is about the game. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about first turn advantage to jump tracks. And of course, when I start talking about first turn advantage, the obvious thing to talk about is chess, I guess. It must be because I put the slide there. So in chess, there's actually a small advantage for going first. And we think that's a very, very good thing. It feels right if you get, oh, I flipped the coin, I go first, and I have a small advantage. So in chess, it's sort of generally accepted that it's sort of 54-46. I mean, there's various discussions about exactly what it is, but that's mostly what it is in chess. In Hearthstone, at the newer level of play, sort of our copper and silver players, for paladins, it's a 54-46 advantage for going first, and they actually have the biggest first turn advantage. It's sort of the new level player of any of the classes. Rogues have a 53% chance of winning if they go first, down to druids at a 51% chance of going first. And that's where sort of the range. The other classes sort of fall in the middle, but our average is about 53-47 advantage for going first versus second at copper and silver level play. It's a little bit different at higher level play. It changes a little, like the rogue actually has the smallest first turn advantage, which probably doesn't surprise a lot of you. And the paladin still has the highest first turn advantage. It's a smaller one. On average, it's 51% or so. But actually, it's exactly the way we like it. In general, it's better to go first. There's a small advantage for going first. And don't get me wrong, there are undoubtedly decks out there that have a second turn advantage. But in general, you want to go first, and we want to keep it that way. And it's working the way that we sort of wanted to and intended to. Now I'm going to talk a little about class balance and tell you which is the best class. So actually, this is going to be pretty interesting because I can't actually tell you what's the best class because the metagame is still shifting. We don't know what the best class is. I'm going to show you the rankings of the different classes over a series of days, sort of mid-October, which is when we randomly grab these stats. So for 3-star Master, our highest level play and ranked play, on one day in mid-October, Hunter and Paladin are looking really strong. They're our top classes. Except that on the very next day, Rogue and Warlock were looking like our top classes. And a couple days after that, Shaman and Mage were looking like our top classes. So we absolutely expect the metagame to settle down. We expect there to be, the classes to shake out which one's better, which one's worse, all that kind of stuff. But we're actually really excited that we don't know which one is which yet. So the class balance is still up in the air, and hopefully you will, play those awesome decks and you'll show us which class is best. Now, I'm going to step aside to Ben, and he's going to talk a little bit about the patches that are coming up in the next couple of months and what you can expect to see very, very soon.
I'm super excited to tell you about what's coming in these upcoming patches. There's some amazing stuff coming up. The first thing is that we're changing some cards. We're changing Mind Control. It's a little frustrating to play against Mind Control. So we're going to make it cost 10. And we're also changing Starving Buzzard. It's a mixture of rage and excitement. It's great. At the copper, silver, gold, platinum levels of play, Hunter is very strong right now, especially against rogues, mages, and druids. And so this change will help that matchup a little bit. We're going to make the Buzzard a 2-1. But that's not all. We're also changing Unleash the Hounds. But we have a couple ideas of what we want to do to this card. We're not exactly sure which direction we like the best yet, and so we're still talking about it, but we're discussing some interesting options for this card. Also, we're updating ranked play. We've heard a lot of feedback that the arena is super fun to play and feels very rewarding. And we want our play mode to feel like that as well. So we are going to have this new mode. There's 25 new ranks. Each of them features a minion from Hearthstone, starting at the lowest level, which is rank 25, Angry Chicken. Rank 24 is Leper Gnome, but it gets better. And every game you win in this new ranked mode, you'll earn a star. And when you fill up your star meter, you'll go to the next rank. And every game you lose, you'll lose a star, and you can actually go down ranks in this mode. So it'll be a very clear indicator of how you stack up against other players who are playing. We still have our casual mode that has no rankings that you can still play in, but if you want a little bit more hardcore experience, this should help you kind of orient yourself against other players. These are going to be in 1-month seasons, and at the end of the month, we're going to reset you all the way back to Angry Chicken. Here's all of our ranks from 25 to 1 here. And actually, if you make it all the way through the first rank, there's a special extra rank called Legend. And the Legend rank, once you attain it, you can't fall out of it. And it will tell you every night, it'll calculate exactly how good you are in your region. And this is, for example, this player is 275th in Europe, for example. And so you can see exactly how you stack up with your fellow players. We also wanted to have a couple other reasons to play in this mode. So we added a couple things. Not all of them will be in this upcoming patch. The first one is ranked play card backs. So if you participate in a season of ranked play, we will give you an exclusive card back for that season, and there'll be a new one the next month. And you can change your card back to this new card back. We have some awesome card backs. This one's kind of Mista Pandaria themed that you can earn this way, but it won't be coming immediately. And the other thing that Rob Pardo mentioned in the opening ceremony was our Golden Heroes. They look freaking amazing. They're so cool, and you get a Golden Hero power to go with them. You have to win 500 games in ranked with that class in order to get that, so it'll be very exclusive and exciting to people playing in ranked play. Also, we're going to make a minor change to the arena. we're adding 3 new keys, so you can go from, instead of 9 wins, you can go all the way up to 12 wins. And there'll be some exciting, bigger rewards for those top-end keys as well. That's the Molten Key, the Frostborn Key, and the Lightforge Key, for those who like names of keys. One feature that we're working for a future pack is reconnection. If you get disconnected for some reason, you want to get back in and keep playing, we're working on that. That'll be in a future patch. And this is awesome. This is so exciting. We got some really cool new effects for some of our most amazing legendary minions. Check this out. There's no sound, but there's a little delay on the sound there, but it's thunder as he comes in. So some pretty awesome new effects for some legendary minions. We're working on even more of those to make our minions feel really exciting when they enter the battlefield. But now I'm going to pass it back to Eric Dodds to tell you about the future of Hearthstone.
Awesome, bro. So by the future, this is sort of our philosophies mostly going forward. So there's not, we're going to talk about, like, at a high level, the general sorts of things you can expect. Although first I'll talk a little bit about going mobile. And awesome. So we're, of course, still working on the iPad version, and we expect that to be out shortly after we release the build on PC. And as Rob said, of course, we are working on the Android version. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. We don't have a time frame for it. We're still pretty early on this, so as Rob said, sort of like the second half of 2014 or something like that. And we're also we have it on Windows 8 Touch. Actually, if you want to play it on a touch machine on the show floor, if you go to the Intel booth here, you can play it there. They have the touch version of it playable there, so go check it out. It's really cool. And of course, as Rob said before, iPhone. And these are all things that we're working on end of next year or second half of next year is sort of the plan. And again, we're Blizzard, so it's a little fuzzy, but it'll be ready when it's ready. I also wanted to give you sort of a high-level overview of what we're thinking going forward with expansions. And now we're really excited to get a whole bunch of new content out to you guys, new cards, new features, all that kind of stuff. And so, of course, when we first started talking about it, we started talking about expansions. And we're definitely going to be doing expansions, the sort of thing that you would expect from a collectible card game. So, you'll see an expansion with, oh, it has a bunch of new cards that comes in packs that I can get with some new features and a lot of great flavor and all that sort of stuff. We're definitely doing that. That being said, as we were actually talking about how can we get cards out to people, we wanted to make sure that we were sort of taking care of all of our different types of players. So we sort of were talking about 3 different types of players who are looking for additional card content, and we want to make sure we take care of everybody. So there's the hardcore player, and for the hardcore player, you want to have additional content that's changing the metagame, and new cards for my collection, and changing up the decks, and just a lot of new interesting ththings going on, and we want to make sure that we are providing that. At the same time, we also have the casual player, and it's maybe a little bit of a misnomer because, well, I was about to say I fall into that category, but that's probably not true at all. But the casual player is somebody who doesn't play the game quite as much, and for that player, the cards that are in the expert set are actually going to be providing new content for a while. It'll be a while before you get through all of those cards and see all of the cards and see all of the different things that could happen. And if you start providing a lot of extra mechanics too early, those players can get kind of overwhelmed. They're like, hey, I was just kind of figuring out what's going on here, and you're throwing a bunch of mechanics at me. Whoa, little much. And the third type of player, which is probably all of us, is the thrifty player. The player who goes, this is a collectible card game. I don't want to be spending too much money buying sets, as you rapidly put them out there. And so there's the 3 types of players, and to sort of make something that all of those types of players could be excited about, we're planning on putting out adventures. And That's probably the first way that we're going to put new cards into the environment with an adventure. And what an adventure is sort of a focused single-player PvE experience where you'd probably be playing against a boss or series of bosses in a very focused environment where you can kind of change your deck out to play in different ways to be successful. And as you play against that adventure, you're going to be earning the cards that are associated with that adventure. So imagine 20, maybe 30 cards that are associated with an adventure, and they are going to be cards that absolutely change the metagame, because we're paying attention to that a lot, and we'll make sure that these cards are going to shift the metagame, but they're not going to be cards that specifically have crazy new mechanics in them just yet. Those we're saving for sort of the expansion side. So what you can expect is us to put an adventure out there, and then maybe an expansion, and then we're still sort of figuring our way, but that's the kind of thing that you can expect going forward. So the great thing about adventures is we can get them out pretty quickly. We're going to have PvE content in them. You're going to be able to earn all of the cards just by having the adventure. You're not going to be buying packs or anything like that. And we're not overwhelming with too many mechanics, but there's still new cool stuff coming out there. So that's sort of what adventures are going to look like.
These cards are going to be super exciting.
Ridiculous. Also, I want to say that the excitement Ben is showing on stage is actually how he is all of the time. So it makes for a very, very interesting working environment. So lastly, you've already seen the movie, but I thought it's probably worthwhile seeing this movie again, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it after I show the movie. But first, here's Elite Tauren Chieftain again. This is awesome. So this is, of course, the card that you get for coming to BlizzCon. You get the golden version of it, or getting the virtual ticket. But I thought you'd probably want to see. You've already seen this. You know that it's a 5/5 for 5, and it gives each player a power chord card. But I thought you actually might want to see what the power chord cards actually are. So those are what the 3 different cards are. And when you play, you of course get a little music perhaps from Elite Tauren Chieftain of the 3 different songs. And you don't know what card you're going to get. You don't know what card your enemy's going to get when you play it. You just know that it's going to be awesome. So that's the Elite Tauren Chieftain card, and that's pretty much all we have to say for this talk, except that the Hearthstone Innkeepers Invitational is going on, and tomorrow from 10 to 1 on the Warcraft stage, the finals will be there with the streamers who will be playing against each other, the best streamers at that point, and I think it's going to be a fantastic tournament. So if you have the time, I totally recommend you going there. And thanks a lot. Have a great BlizzCon.
Thank you, BlizzCon!